Today on FirstDown PlayBook, we're going to continue our series on youth football defensive line play. And our first edition was devoted to a zero nose. In other words, head up on the center, playing either a two-way go or playing front door or back door, whatever technique that you felt like would be appropriate for your nose guard at the youth football level. Today, we're going to look more at the shaded nose, okay? You might think not a big difference, but actually there's a huge difference in playing a shaded nose as opposed to a head-up nose. And for a youth football player, a young, maybe 8, 9, 10-year-old, we highly recommend that if you're going to play a defense that you give your young nose a gap responsibility like we are here today. And in this situation, with a shade, you're giving that nose the A-gap responsibility. In the first series with the zero technique, we talked about moving a younger player off of the ball to give them the opportunity to read the blocks that are happening. That's still somewhat true with a shade, but the shaded nose, once again, being responsible for just one gap makes it a lot easier for this player maybe to hug the ball a little bit more if you want to do that. Now, an important thing to understand with the shade, it's not just true with a center, be true with any shade that you have on a guard, a tackle, even a tight end, is that the more experienced the player, the tighter the shade they can play. All right? And the reason for this is that the whole premise with a shaded player, once again, is that you're playing a gap responsible defense, and your nose is responsible for the A gap. Having said that, if you play a tight, if you play a tight nose right here, you're running the risk of having that nose get reached, all right, and losing the gap responsibility. And anytime you lose your gap integrity, you got problems on defense, whether it's a Pop Warner defense or an NFL defense. So the least experienced players, you want to start a little more in the gap, all right? Give them a strong opportunity to maintain, all right, that A gap. You don't want to line up so wide that you let the guard actually take away your A gap, but that's just something to keep in mind. So let's just go through the different blocks that you're going to see. The very first one we've got here is just a base block. That base block might come, straight out. It might come straight at the nose, but essentially this is now where your nose will want to learn to get into a left-handed stance, all right, with the left hand down in the dirt and the right hand being free. And the reason, once again, is that you're working on gap control. You want this nose to control this gap out here. So it doesn't always have to be like that. There are younger players that maybe aren't ready to do this, but ideally you would want to put this nose in a left-handed stance, left hand down, left foot back slightly, all right, not too much. You don't want to get in a track stance. You want it to be kind of balanced. But then your right hand, all right, is off and ready to attack, and keep your right hand, your right shoulder, your right hip, your right knee, everything free in this A gap, whereas it would be just the opposite if the shade were over here, all right? Now you would have your right hand down in the dirt and your left hand free to keep everything free in this A gap. So on a base block, essentially when the ball is snapped, the nose is going to attack the center right here. Hands inside, keep your outside, your free hand free in the A gap. And what you want to do is just hold that gap right there, not let the center off on the linebacker. And once again, everybody else on the defense will be playing some type of gap control for the other gaps on both sides of the ball. Now, all right, let's look at what we're calling a cutoff block, all right? Now you're not playing head up, so there's a difference in a cutoff and a reach. A cutoff block means that the center, once again, slightly different than a base block, is going to try to keep the nose from getting to a play over on this side. All right, so likely what's happening right here is that there's a run. The run may be inside, the run may be outside, but the center's job is to make sure that the nose doesn't cross their face and get over here. So once again, gap responsibility first, attack the center, control the A gap, but once the ball starts getting outside of the interior and you feel the center working to keep you away from play side, now that nose is going to fight, all right, rip, try to get over here into the far A gap, all right, and just keep pursuing the ball inside out. Now, there are different techniques. A lot of youth football coaches like to allow their interior people, particularly when they're in a gap, all right, to penetrate. If that's the case, that's fine. Just understand that when you penetrate, sometimes you can set yourself to be upfield for a trap block or something like that. So, but ideally, the biggest thing you want to teach a young nose that's shaded is to control this A gap first and then play the ball away later on the cutoff block. Now, the opposite of a cutoff block is a reach block. Once again, this is at the heart of what you must teach a young nose with their gap responsibility. Once again, they're playing the A gap right here. So the last thing that can happen is for this center to reach your nose, all right, and now this A gap does not have a player in it, and you're very vulnerable to the inside run. So this is a block that needs to be worked on over and over and over again. Your nose, once again, needs to understand that that center cannot reach them and cannot control the A gap. He must control the A gap. Now, goes back to what I was talking about just a second ago. Less experienced player, widen them in the gap a little bit. All right, this is going to help them maintain integrity in the A gap. If they're playing a pretty tight shade right here and the center is good, there's a good chance that they're going to get reached and you're going to have problems inside. So once again, this is just the tips for what you want to be teaching in regards to a shaded nose versus a reach block. All right, now with a scoop or a zone block away. All right, a zone block is when essentially what's going to happen here is that your nose is going to get zone blocked and they're going to try to get the center up on the backer right here. All right, so if I were to take this player right here, I'm going to go ahead and duplicate him. All right, and I'm going to make this the linebacker here. So what they're trying to do, all right, with your shaded nose right here, is they're trying to get the center off on either a front side backer or a backside backer. All right, and when they try to do that, and I'll go ahead and just, for the sake of simplicity here, put the backer in here. So what you want to do, once again, understand gap responsibility, gap integrity is important. Attack the center right here. And what you want to try to do is get your hands on the center and do not let that center get off on your backer. All right, and the more experienced the nose gets, the better off they'll do that. But if they'll just engage that center right there and hang on and try to keep their right arm free in this gap, all right, it's going to be a win-win. Now, there are people that are going to play it more aggressively, let this nose get upfield, all right, and then if the center gets on the backer has to defend for himself. As a youth football coach teaching fundamentals, the best way, in our opinion, to teach this is to teach this nose right here to eat up these two blocks. Don't let your center get off on your backer. Play the A gap. Just be tough in that A gap. Keep your pad level down and let this backer go make plays. All right, now, the next block we want to look at is a double team. Similar, all right, to what we just talked about, except there is no zone scheme going outside right here. This is simply going to be a double team more often than not, an inside run, all right? But there are similarities in that your nose, once again, wants to attack the center, and what they're going to feel, they're not going to feel the outside scoop type motion. They're going to feel a base block and a down block. So they're going to attack and defeat the base block. When they feel the down block, now they've got to do one of a few things. They need to turn, drop their hip, drop their shoulder into this guard right here, all right, and maintain not only the A gap, but try to create a pow right here to where neither one of these two players can get off. Now, the second part of this is as this player gets to be more experienced, they can drop, create a pow, and then learn to get back up and then penetrate in this A gap right here. But the big thing that you want to make sure that you establish with a young nose guard, a young shade, once again, maintain the A gap. Don't get knocked off of the ball into your linebacker's lap, all right, because you're going to create a problem not only for movement, all right, versus the run game, but now your linebacker is not going to be able to flow left or right. So once again, double team, attack the center, feel the guard, drop the near hip, all right, in the crease, and create a pow, and then penetrate late. Now, a down block. All right, when we didn't draw anything else in but the down because there's several things that can happen. We'll show you here in a second. When you get a down block with the center, all right, different. You're not getting that base block and a down block now for the double team. You're getting the center blocking away, and when the nose sees that and they attack, all right, the center, what's going to happen is they're going to get their hands on that center, all right, and start riding them as they go down. Ideally, you would like to, once again, try to get this nose to keep that center from getting to the next level. That center is either blocking out on a 2 technique or trying to get up on a backer over here. And so if the nose can do the defense a lot of favors if they don't let that happen. If the center goes wide enough, and sometimes they will, to where they get off the ball, then once again, now what happens is the nose has just got to see that, work back into the guard that's trying to block down, and either penetrate in this A gap right here, maintaining once again their A gap responsibility, or if they see the ball get wide, they can cross face right here, all right, and then get to the B gap. So just a different type of scheme to where you're going to get both players, all right, lined up in the gap responsibility for the nose that are blocking down, and you might even have a guard pulling here. All right, so let's take it to the next level. All right, this is exactly kind of what you do have here. But it's the double team that you had before. Exactly the same as what we talked about with the double team. Dropping the inside hip, dropping the inside shoulder, getting thin, penetrating in the A gap. The difference is now we're showing you that they are pulling a guard. All right, and they're either going to attack this B gap or maybe the C gap or maybe even bring the guard all the way outside for a sweep. This is where now, once you maintain, all right, create a power right here. Don't let your linebacker get to where they can't flow over the top. All right, but the difference is that once the nose guard feels the ball go outside, now they can try to either cross the face, all right, to get there, or they once again can penetrate and then get in that guard's hip pocket and follow it that way. So once again, this is just a guard pull on a shaded nose. Now, the guard could pull the other direction, all right, meaning that I'm the shade right here. They're counting on that center to, this is just like a cutoff block once again, and now the guard is pulling outside. Couple ways you can play this. Once the guard pulls outside, there's a good chance that this A gap is now not quite as important as it was before. Don't want to just immediately cross face, all right, that type of thing, but at some point, when you feel this cutoff block and you're maintaining the A gap and you see the guard cross your face and everything is telling you it's outside, now this nose guard can cross face into the next A gap and maybe even over into the next B gap. Now, an alternative way, a lot of youth football coaches will play interior people, particularly in a gap, is that they will allow them to penetrate. If you've got a wide enough technique right here with your nose and that guard pulls, then this nose right here can attack and play a penetrating technique and just get in the hip pocket of that guard, and that guard is going to take them right to the football. Just 2 different ways of playing it. But what you don't want to do is have your nose trying to play halfway across, halfway penetrate, because half of each one of those techniques will equal to nothing good for the defense. All right, let's go one more here. Now, once again, the center could pull. Not likely in youth football, but sometimes you may have a scheme where they like to pull their center. And all you're going to have in that situation, once again, is now as you attack, all right, the center, and you see them pull and you feel the down block, once again, one of 2 ways that you can play it. The ideal way, if you're going to play against a well-coached offense, would be to, once again, attack the center, feel the guard, all right, make sure that you maintain your A-gap integrity first, and then cross face, all right, to the ball once you see the center pull and the ball go outside. You can still play it the way we talked earlier and have the nose penetrate and get in the hip pocket of the center. However, a well-coached offense will not just leave this guard one-on-one with the nose. They will also have the far side guard, all right, scoop inside and get a piece to where now it makes it pretty impossible for the nose to split the two guards on this blocking scheme right here. But if they're not playing it that way, and sometimes youth football blocking schemes won't, if they're just going to play it and block down and pull, then yeah, you can just let this nose get in the hip pocket, go right to the football. Once again, two different ways that you can play this. Don't try to play both of them. Now, the final two looks that we're going here are pass protection. How to beat pass protection, and you're going to really get one of two types of pass pro. If you get a one-on-one pass pro where they're just locking the center up against your nose, good for you. I mean, if this player is not involved right here, then once again, the A-gap integrity is pretty easy to keep, and it's pretty hard for a center at the youth football level to defeat a nose one-on-one when they're playing in the gap right here, when they're playing a shade. So what you're most of the time going to get, all right, if it's going to be man protection, is that they're going to double, all right, they're going to double team the nose right here. Because over here you probably have got like a 3 technique outside. There'll be a one-on-one block, but these two in here will make sure that there's not penetration in this A-gap. So the coaching points for this are as follows. I want to make sure that they do their job, all right? And as I'm here, I want to see if I can split this double team. And then that has to happen first. You don't need, unless you've got some type of scheme, stunt, pressure on, it's important that you keep your A-gap integrity, once again, first and foremost. Now, after I do that, and I find that they are solid inside, they've essentially taken a half a man each, and they're blocking me, and now I need to try to not just create a stalemate here. At this point, you can work to find an edge either way. Now, listen to what I'm saying here. I'm going to work to find an edge only to get this guard to open up a little bit so that now I can come back inside and still get in the A-gap, because you're going to get yourself in trouble if you just let this shaded nose right here take off running around here in the B-gap or take off running in the far A-gap. You're going to lose your gap integrity once again, and you're going to have a quarterback running down the field, 20 yards down the field, and nobody defending them because you lost your pass rush lanes right here. So once again, I can attack the double, look for an edge to separate the two, but then work back inside, all right, to the quarterback in my intended pass rush lane here. All right, now, the last slide I have here for you, all right, you'll see there's two diagrams here. Essentially, this is what you will get a lot in youth football. You'll get a lot in a lot of levels of football to where there's going to be, excuse me, gap protection one way or another. So if the gap protection is, in this case, to the nose's left, right, where everybody's working away, he's going to see the center work away, and now this guard is going to come down and take the nose, all right, in this A-gap. So what needs to happen here as the nose attacks, it's not necessarily premeditated that it's going to be pass. You got to make sure you read pass first. When you read the center away, off the ball and away, now work back. Now you're going to try to defeat this guard if they don't get over there fast enough in this A-gap. If the guard does a good job and they cut off this A-gap, now you can, all right, work across the face to the B-gap, all right, and create a two-way go right here for the nose. Now, if the protection is to you, all right, same thing. What's going to happen is you're going to try to beat the center off the ball, and like I was saying in one-on-one pass rush, it's hard for a center, all right, to actually block a nose one-on-one, but understand that gap protection is a little different. This center now can be very aggressive and take away, all right, the nose right here, because they understand they've got a guard doing the same thing in the backside A gap. So as you're teaching this nose, they attack upfield. When they feel the center go away, same thing. Work back in this far A gap right here. Try to beat the far guard into the A gap to the quarterback. If the guard gets there, sometimes you can even go back to the next B gap. So either way, turn protection to the nose's left, turn protection to the nose's right. That's the way you're going to handle this. So keep these blocking schemes in mind. Once again, we're going to go all the way out, start working on the a tackle lined up or a guard lined up on the offensive guard coming up soon. And another point that I just want to make is this: that as you're teaching, and this is in edit mode on FirstDown PlayBook, understand that these are cards that you can take to practice, and you can have the blocking schemes already set up for your scout team or for your players to block against one another. Very helpful when it comes to being prepared for practice so that you don't have to necessarily draw up a bunch of cards. You're using the same thing that you teach your defensive line with what you're going to show your scout team or what you're going to show your players as far as giving offensive blocking scheme looks to your defensive line.